Yes, hello, that's right. It's Joe here, live for Joyrider TV, back with some very exciting and interesting Q&A, where, yes, I am going to be answering your most pressing catamaran sailing questions. Oh, yes, it's true. That is what we're up to. If this is your first time visiting the Q&A, two types of questions in the Q&A. We've got, because it's live, the Q&A goes out live every Friday, 6:30 Greek time. And so there will hopefully be people watching live who will be asking questions. But if you're not able to make it here live, don't worry. You can just put any questions that you've got in the comment section below, and then I will respond to your questions in next week's live Q&A. Yes, I will. As always, I've got what I'm calling a lead question, and today's lead question has come from Hussein in Sokna, Egypt, in the Gulf of Suez. I dare say he's not in the Gulf of Suez right now, but yeah, so I had the pleasure of sailing with Tarek and Hussein in Egypt before Christmas, and so I know exactly what the issue is that he's talking about. So here we go. First preloaded question from Hussein in Sokna, Egypt, and the question is, when the wind is blowing offshore, and as luck would have it, I've got a pre-made diagram here to show what sort of situation we've got going on. So what we've got is a sandy beach, and to the side of the launch, there's a pier that extends a reasonable distance out. Another issue that we've got is the water up until, let's say, around this far out, depending on where the tide is too shallow to put the rudders down, not only completely, but even marginally. So the water is quite shallow. So what Hussein is asking is, what is the best means of launching the boat in this situation when the wind is blowing offshore? Okay, so it kind of depends, firstly, on how much wind there is, because if there's you may have seen some of my videos from Egypt before Christmas, and there was one where there was very little wind. So in the situation where there is very little wind, then you should be able to actually turn the boat round, point the boat out to sea. Yes, it's a little bit into the realms of bad seamanship to do this, but under the banner of getting away. And if the wind is really light, then it is feasible to do this. So you turn the boat so it's pointing out to sea, just drop the rudders down so they're in the water enough to get a bit of steering. Don't let the boat go. And then when you're ready, jump on the boat and off we go. So that would be the option for if the wind was really, really light. But because Hussein said they did get into some difficulties in this situation, I'm guessing that on this occasion, the wind wasn't extremely light. So what can we do? All right, so the next option is going to be, let's say, it's pretty rare that the wind is ever like completely directly offshore like this. So if the wind's got a little bit of angle to it, so if we exaggerate the wind direction, and if the wind is coming from here, then what we want to do is get a bit of distance away from where the wind's coming from. So then we can just turn the boat a bit, you know, as much as we can before we jump on, and then giving ourselves plenty of space in front of the obstruction. Then we can set off and turn out to sea. And in this situation where the water is really shallow here, there's nothing to stop us from walking the boat out a little bit until it gets a little bit deeper. Like I'd say knee to waist deep is a good depth to start off in if we need to have good control of the boat from the get-go. Then walking it out a bit so we can get the rudders in nicely. And then we've got to make this turn to get around the pier. But if you're thinking, yeah, actually, the wind was more offshore, which means we're not going to be able to turn the boat very far until the sails catch. And then that's going to point us back towards the beach, water getting shallower, very difficult to bear away, perhaps with a reasonable amount of wind on, which, yeah, means that this option is going to be, you know, difficult. In this situation, if the wind's got a little bit of this right-hand bias to it, then going the other way is an absolute non-starter, because with, like, even here, boat is square to the wind and we're still pointing towards the beach, whereas the other way, boat is square to the wind and we're pointing away from the beach. And if this pontoon wasn't there, then we'd be all right just to sail off. But because that pontoon is there, then that is the issue. So I'm sure those of you who are regular visitors to Joyrider TV and the Q&A are probably going to have an idea of what I'm going to suggest. But with the wind coming from this kind of direction, what I would suggest is walking the boat out so that you're in deep enough water, again, knee-deep water, rudders up, and then if it's fairly clear behind, or, you know, I know that there are, just to add a little bit more jeopardy to the procedure, there are some moored boats generally in here. So what we want to do is bring the boat to the side so that these moored boats are nowhere near directly behind us. And what we can then do is we can go out backwards. Yes, that's right. On Joyrider TV, we fully endorse a bit of backwards, and we're not going to not go backwards on this occasion. So if the wind is strong, get the boat pointing into the wind, rudders all the way up, because the water is quite shallow. And we're then going to just sit on the bows, everything else ready to go. Main sheet attached, jib sheets attached, but the sheets are loose. We're then going to jump on the bows. And what that will then do, if we, here is our Office Hands Dave Hobie 16 model. Because when we get on the bows, this part of the hulls are then going to act like a rudder when we put those bits in. And what that's going to do, by sinking the bows in, the bows are then going to act like a rudder and keep the boat going fairly straight. Now, the only thing we might have to do here is, if you've got an uneven, let's say, if the two sailors going out are of uneven weights. So say you've got a gentleman of 100 kilos and a small girl of 30 kilos on the other side, then you might have to adjust slightly. So the heavier sailor is not quite as far forwards and the lighter sailor a bit further forwards. so that you're sinking the same amount of bow on either side. If you've got more weight on one side, more bow in, the boat is going to start to turn, and we want the boat to go straight backwards. So having done that, we're just going to go backwards. And because of these moored boats and our direction and how shallow the water might be, we're going to go quite a long way backwards. And basically, we're going to go far enough back until we feel we have got loads of space to then climb on board the trampoline, put the rudders down fully, and then we can make this bear away. That is what I would say is the correct maneuver to do. Yeah, I think that would be the one. The other one we could do, and this is really going for it, but let's add a bit of jeopardy, and let's say there's another pontoon here. And this is going to make this backward sailing really a bit dangerous. Like there's a strong chance of collision. So what could we do here? All right, we're taking it to the next level. That's what we're doing. Best thing to do in this situation, I would say, if we definitely can't make this bear away, going backwards, no. You could possibly, if the water was deep enough, you could have the rudders down, sit on the trampoline, steer the boat backwards. But then the thing with the Hobie or any catamaran rudder system is it's designed that the rudders come up if it hits the bottom, but only if you're going forwards. If you're going backwards and you hit the bottom with the rudders down, you're going to damage the boat. Could be quite severe. With certain types of older boat, especially, you could actually break the gudgeons, the part of the boat that the rudder stock actually attaches onto, and then that's it. You're done until you get replacement gudgeons. And believe me, they can be very difficult to replace, especially with an older boat. So best option here, we're not going to put the mainsail up. Whoa. Did you say we're not going to put the mainsail up? Yes, I did. We're not going to put the mainsail up. We're going to sail out because with just the jib, we're going to be able to turn the boat away from the wind completely and hold the boat. We can then jump on the boat and sail out through these moorings, get far enough out to sea, turn the boat into the wind. Now, because the wind is offshore, what that generally means is the sea will be pretty flat. So what that means is it's actually going to be less difficult putting the mainsail up out to sea. So we can put the mainsail up when we're out there. Yes, it's going to be a little bit tricky. The main trick shot with this is going to be keeping the boat pointing head to wind. And yes, when I'm back in the water in the season, I have done a hoisting the mainsail afloat video in the past, but it wasn't very windy. It was probably no more than 10 knots. Do we want to try this in 25 knots of wind to see if we can do it? Do we want to make it more difficult by doing it single-handed? Yes, yes, and thrice yes, we're going to do that. So yeah, so there we go. That is what I would say are our best options for getting out of a tight beach when the wind is offshore. Now, while we're here, we could just touch on the topic of, okay, getting back in is going to be no picnic as well. Yeah, it could be a little bit tricky. So what we need to do is think about our approach. If the wind's got a little bit of angle to it, we're going to have what I would call the I've always called it the making tack, the tack where we're actually making progress to where we want to go. And then the other tack is called the spacing tack. This is in my actual own language, which I invented. So we want to look at the making tack and the spacing tack. And what we'd probably want to do, the wind is like this direction. So this would be our spacing tack. And we'd want to go as close to the pier. In fact, we want to come as close to the back of the furthest back moored boat as possible. And then as close to the pier as possible, tack onto the making tack. And what we don't want to be doing is really trying to pinch around these moored boats. Pinch is what we call it when we're trying to sail closer to the wind than the boat actually wants to sail. So like when we're going so far up into the wind, we're losing our steering. Yeah, we don't want to do that. So what we might have to be ready to do, if we're on our making tack and there's this boat here, we might just have to go, all right, we're going to have to tack again. Or probably better still is we're going to want to go, okay, we're just going to take one for the team. We're going to go behind this boat. So if in doubt, if you're not 100% sure that you can make it around the moored boat, go behind it. Then you can head up towards the wind again. Now we're pretty clear. Now we can tack, spacing tack, and maybe by this point the water's shallow enough, but another tack. Lovely. And we've made it back in. So there we go. I think that pretty much covers it. The offshore wind. The same thing would go for if, you know, if the wind is like this, strong, and there's moored boats on these pontoons and not much space to get out, consider going out with just the jib up. If there's no other options. Yes, some boats have got difficult to put up mainsails. And if you have got a boat where the mainsail is difficult to put up, when's the last time you had a look at all of the parts involved in hoisting the mainsail? What parts are involved? Number one would be the actual mainsail itself. So before you leave the beach, give the front edge, the luff of the mainsail, a good wash with fresh water if available, or if it's not available, when you get out to sea, you can just dip it in the water, and even salt water is going to act like a bit of a lubricant. You're just going to have to wash it afterwards, wash that salt off. But yeah, front edge of the mainsail, first thing. Second thing, maybe get the boat on its side on the beach and wash the track of the mast. Make sure there's nothing stuck in there and have a good look at it to see if the track of the mast might be obscuring your mainsail when it goes up. Third thing, the top of the mast, where the main halyard rolls, either like on a Hobie style boat, rolls over the top, or on a F-18 kind of, or Prindle or something else style boat, where you've just got a little roller at the top where the halyard rolls over. Have a look at that bad boy. Does it roll freely? Yes or no? If no is the answer, then look at why it doesn't roll freely and take the according action to make it easier. Yeah, if you've got a main halyard that's really stretchy, perhaps consider replacing that for either a thicker rope, which will be easier to pull, easier on the hands, or a rope of a higher quality that doesn't stretch. Because when you pull your main halyard and the rope stretches and the sail only goes up a little bit, it means the amount of work you've got to do to put your main sail up is much, much more, and you don't want that. All right, there we go. Have I spoken for long enough on this topic? Yes. All right, so I'm going to check in with everybody who's now checking in. First in today, we've got Mark and Janet in Ohio, USA. Loved the boat show. Got to get a set of those foils for my Hobie 16. Oh, yes. Yeah, the foiling kit for the catamaran is what we might not have mentioned so much in the video is it's very much in the early stages of actual production to be sold to the public, let's say. So it's going to be a little while until those bad boys are available. But of course, to sell the video, I had to make it sound like it was slightly more possible at this time. Was that the wrong thing to do? No, I don't think so. I think you guys like what I like, and not when I saw that, I thought, yes, that is the one. I want to slap that on. Somebody mentioned put it on a Hobie 14, and I would agree that is the right choice. Better still, put it on the inflatable, on the Minicat. The only downside of putting this sort of foiling kit on the Minicat is that on the Minicat and a lot of the other inflatable boats, they just have one single rudder. But their example, the Hobie Trifoiler. This was the first ever production foiling boat built by Hobie a long time ago. It basically had a central, we could draw a picture, couldn't we? We've got time. It had a central fuselage. Where are we? So it had a central fuselage, bit like an aeroplane, and then it had two seats in line like this, and then it had a big old beam that ran across, and then on the end of this beam on both sides was what looked like a really small surfboard. And then on each of the surfboards, we're going 3D here, by the way, was what looked like a windsurfing rig. Like that. These rigs were connected with a bar that ran across that went to a main sheet. And then on each of these floats, we then had what type of foil? Like a J foil, which is sort of like that. And then on the Hobie Trifoiler, it had one rudder with a big old foil on it like this. And then each of these floats had like a water ski kind of thing on the front, which is like a sensor to sense how high, what the ride height was. So then it would automatically trim the ride height. Now, the Minicat with its central rudder could be made to foil much like this. And the reason the Minicat would be so good is because it is such a lightweight boat, less than 50 kilos. And I think that thing would be very, very quick and would foil in a very light wind. There we go. Yeah, so thanks. Hussein is actually on board in Sokhna, Egypt. Great reporting from the boat show. Thanks very much. Yeah, it was very good to be at the boat show, even though there's not a lot of catamarans there. I have got a dream, by the way. Hope you don't mind me just going off on one a little bit. But here's my dream, is to bring catamarans back to the biggest boat show in the world. And what I'm thinking is in the middle of the sailing hall, we're going to have a large circular stand. I'm thinking yellow carpet would be nice. In the middle of the stand, we have a hut where things happen. And then what we do is we'll have one stand for all of the different types of catamaran. You see where we're going with this? This is going all the way around. I'd like to think all of the catamarans on the stand kind of propped up a bit so they're flying the hull. This is going to be nice. And we could make this a real, you know, almost like a show in itself. I've run out of little catamarans, but anyway, you get the idea. In between the bows of each catamaran, they could have a TV with the videos on specific to that type of boat. In the middle, all the brochures for the different types and representatives from each of these different classes around. So we've got the A class, we've got the Tornado, we've got the F-18, F-16, we've got the Hobie class association, we've got Topcat involved there because Topcat, for those of you in the USA, Topcat is the biggest catamaran class in Germany, probably. We've got the Dart 18 in there as well. Lovely. And we've got all of the different kind of, let's say in a dream, all of the different kind of racing or slightly more performance classes. We've got the Nacra 570 in there, or we've got, like, we could just have a big F-18 stand with 7 different types of F-18. This is the dream. And if that dream comes true, then yes, I'm in. Yeah. And we'll call it the Joyrider TV stand. How about that? Maybe not. I don't know. We call it Catamaran World. If it sounds like I'm really excited, it's because I am. By the way. All right, so moving on. Scott is on board, dropping it in the slot. Nice presentation at the boat show main stage. Oh, yes. Yeah, it went as well as I could have possibly hoped. So my kind of thinking with the presentation, if you haven't seen the video yet, it is available to watch on Joyrider TV. But my idea with the presentation was, with so few beach catamarans represented at the biggest boat show in the world, I thought I would actually be the beach catamaran part of the boat show, spreading the word about these small, fast boats that we all love to sail. And there we are. Yeah. All right. Scott adds Hilton Head races in October. Yes. Okay. This is pretty significant news, Justin. Yes, I am confirmed that in October and the start of November, I will be 100% definitely, unless there's some sort of event that goes on, like some sort of, you know, asteroid from another planet or something. I will be in the USA at the end of October. I'll be going to do the Test and Tune 50th anniversary regatta in Hilton Head, USA. And then the following week, I'll be heading over to Corpus Christi in Texas to sail in the Alta Cup, which is a big race which goes on every year. It's like to commemorate the good work of Hobie Alta. And this year, I'm not going to say I'm taking one for the team. I'm going out there to mix it up. And the event is going to be taking place on Hobie waves. Yes, I'm going to go and race a wave and probably get beaten worse than I've ever been beaten before. But at the Corpus Christi Hobie Wave Alta Cup event at the start of November, that one is, we're hoping to get over 150 boats on the start line. So if you're in any way thinking that you might go to that, I'll be there, and it will be quite a spectacle. as well as the Hilton Head event. All right. Scott adds, how Hobie does the boat have to be? Whirlwind sails and saltwater sails, trampoline quality. Yeah, for these sort of events, what you need to do, if you're thinking of going to an event and your boat perhaps is not all original from the manufacturer, like Scott's 16, I know he's got his whirlwind sails on there, very nice, but at certain events only original class sails are allowed. So what you're going to have to do, Scott, is check with the race organizers to see what sails are allowed for that event. But I would think, with it not being like an official Hobie event, at least a non-original trampoline should be all right. Because if, for example, you were going to a Hobie National Championships, you would definitely have to have the original trampoline, the original sails, all parts from Hobie. The only parts that you're allowed not to have from Hobie, of course, would be the ropes, the main sheet system, the tiller extension, and the rudder blades. Everything else would have to be original from the manufacturer. So there we go. Hanny's on board. Nice to have you with us, Hanny from Amsterdam. Hanny is a channel member, which quite tidily brings me on to a development that I thought I would try out. It's a bit of beta testing for everybody who supports Joyrider TV. So with the channel memberships, which you can join through YouTube without having to leave the YouTube platform, and on Patreon, I've added new features on certain tiers of both of these support mechanisms, let's call them, where if you support Joyrider TV, this is massive for me. We can talk. Yes, we can. So I've set up a calendar page on which is linked from both platforms, where you click on the calendar and you can book a time slot for a chat with me right here. I might even have the whiteboard. So yeah, so you just book a slot on the calendar and everybody is entitled to having one chat. I'm starting off with per week, but if it's too popular, you might have to go to per month for those of you who are supporting Joyrider TV, either on Patreon or through channel memberships. Yeah, so check that out. It's just on the tiers. I'm just going to lay it on you now. No messing around. The tiers which are $10 per month or more. So I have introduced a new tier on the channel memberships for those who are keen to do a bit of real chatting in real time. There we go. All right, Thorn G is on board. I met Thorn G at the boat show. Always nice to meet people that have been in the live chat in the comment section. Hello from Germany, back from the boot. Had not expected to see you there on Monday. It was a pleasure to meet you. You too. Okay, and continuing. I'm just trying to remember what your real name was. Was it Torsten? I think it was Torsten. Yes, your secret is out. Leland Lee's on board in Clearwater, Florida. Hello, Lee. And Neil is with us, and Neil is in Donegal, Ireland. Very nice. Hope that the weather is treating you reasonably well. Like not like end of the world sort of weather conditions, which have been known of late. All right, Bobby's with us as well. Bobby says, I've been sailing ice boats lately, as the water here in Lake Erie, Pennsylvania, I believe that is solid right now. I have an idea. Has anybody attempted to use, here we go, a Hobie 16 frame to build an ice boat. What do you think? This could be a one-word answer, and the answer is yes. That thing would be lethal. You could actually just, fit some sort of ice skates to the bottom of a 16 platform. The easiest way, to be honest, would be to take the whole boat. Again, the Hobie 14 would be best. The whole boat, and just put some ice skates on the bottom of the hulls, because the difficulty with using just the frame part of the catamaran is going to be, how are you going to anchor the rigging? That's going to be the tricky bit. But yes. All right, Rhett is with us. How does one get involved in these races? Okay, for the races of which we speak, in fact, all races, you'd find out about them, the official races, through the class association. So depending on what type of boat you're sailing, let's say you're sailing a Hobie 14, Google search maybe the area where you are, like USA Hobie 14 Class Association, and then just follow where that takes you. And there'll be a bit on that website that says events. Then look at all the events, look at the ones which are in your kind of geographical region, and then take it from there. But a good way of finding out events is, and a great facility is Facebook. Join the Catamaran Sailing Relevant to Your Class of Boat Facebook groups, because everybody is using Facebook to promote their events. And then just follow the links, and that will tell you what is required if you want to go to one of these events. If you haven't been to an event before, it really is, it's so good on so many levels. First level is you meet so many like-minded individuals, and everybody is really keen to talk about their boats, to talk about sailing. If it's your first event, everybody will be super keen to become your coach and tell you how best to organize your life in terms of that event. And then the actual sailing part is so good for your personal sailing, because you'll be able to gauge how well you're sailing your boat by your performance against the other boats. And you might, let's say you're not going quite as quickly as the next boat in front. You might go, why are they going quicker? And you might go, he's sitting in a different position, or he seems to have his sails in tighter, or something like that. So going to an event, very good. What you will need definitely is insurance. Just going to let that hang there. There we go. All right, Jack is on board. What are early September conditions like in Vasiliki? Yes, Vasiliki, Lefkas, Greece. This is where all the Joyrider TV videos are coming from. The conditions early September can be absolutely fantastic. And historically, early September is the best time of year in Vasiliki for going fast. It's because I think historically there has been a slight shift of wind direction. Might sound like I'm making this up, but it's true. Which the wind is usually fairly square in the afternoon to the bay. And then as we go into September, it kind of shifts round a little bit more offshore, still side shore mostly, but a little bit more offshore, which means the sea stays flatter. It's flat anyway, stays flatter. You get some good strong wind and you go really fast. But the weather, being the weather, means that nothing is guaranteed. Even if you came out, like, the most reliable period of the season should be the end of July, start of August. But even having said that, the weather being the weather does mean that it's not guaranteed. Granted, at that time of year, you should expect to be getting at least 4 days of a 7-day week with champagne sailing conditions, but it's just the nature of the nature. There we go. All right, we got Philip on board in sunny Ireland. Great to have you on board, Philip. Jack says, sorry, question isn't relevant. It is relevant, actually. I'm here to. That is a catamaran sailing question. Is then a good time to go catamaran sailing? Yeah, and being involved in sports which are dependent on the weather, yes, it does mean that when it's good, you've just got to grab it with both hands and go and charge at it. Talking of charging at it, next key point I've got on my list of key points to mention is the what do you call it? The 2025 speed stick is now up on totaljoyrider.com, and I've made a brand new page for it, and all of the entries on the speed stick currently are from Australia. You may think, well, that's not surprising, that with, you know, Australia being right in the thick of their season right now. But I've looked on a map and I have seen that there are other countries in the Southern Hemisphere who are enjoying quite a nice, you know, reasonably breezy summer at the moment. So you know who you are and you know you need to get on the stick. Yeah, but do check out the new speed stick. It's the new look speed stick. It means there is a bit more work for me to do updating it, but that's okay. That's what I enjoy. Yes. All right. So I'm going to go on to the next preloaded question. Good. Take this boat show stand down. If anybody knows somebody who is willing to sponsor a really expensive boat show stand, then we'll talk, because the reason, back to this boat show thing, the reason there's not a huge amount of small catamaran exhibitors at these big boat shows, like the really big ones like Boot in Germany, is because you rent the space by the square meter. And for a lot of these small boat brands, to have a stand at the boat show would be the whole or more than that company's advertising budget for the whole year, all going in to being at the boat show. So what we need to do is we need to convince the organizers of the Dusseldorf boat show that we need to have a special catamaran feature where we get all these different classes to bring one boat each, put it on the stand, and then we've got this catamaran world kind of feature at the boat show, which I think will really transform the small boat sailing hall at the boat show. And maybe even the monohull classes will follow suit and do something similar. And then that hall will really be something very, very special. There we go. All right, I'll stop there with boat show chat. And I am going to go on to the next preloaded question. And this is from John, who's asked this on Patreon. And the question is, topic, spotting gusts. Yes, says the good sailors at my club are kicking my butt. I suspect they can read the wind better. I look for the dark spots on the water, but I'm not sure where to look relative to the boat. Which way is the wind coming towards me? All right, so here is, let's just focus on the upwind and which bit of wind is actually going to affect us while we're sailing. So if we have like a gust will, a lot of the time, it's been said that they're kind of like a cat's paw, like this sort of shape. And the gust generally, so in each of these bits, we will have a slightly different direction of wind as it comes down. And the shape of this gust generally will move in the direction of the true wind. So that will be moving this way generally. But because of these angles, each bit of that, so it should be spreading as it comes down. So what we want to do is we want to be on the right side of the gust. So I should have drawn this in the middle, but I think it's such a beautiful gust that we're going to keep it there. So if we are sailing here, we're really in line to really monopolize from this gust. So knowing that it's going to be coming down towards us, also in theory, we're sailing this way as well. And as we go round to this side of the outwards, which is going to give us more of a lift, and like, let's say that our windward objective is here, this lift is going to take us closer to our windward objective. Makes sense? So, and of course, there's not going to be just one gust. There might be another one over here. And there'll be different sort of shapes to them. But the general theme is the same. It's going to go kind of more outwards as we come to the outside. So if we're sailing here, then this isn't a particularly good spot to be in. Like in catamaran racing, especially like, let's say the Hobie 14 again as the example, because the Hobie 14, let's call it the slowest of the catamarans to tack. We're not just going to tack to try to get that gust. If we were sailing a boat like an A-class or an F16, which tacks very quickly, we might go, oh, if we tack now, we're going to be looking pretty sharp because we're going to be coming up the left side of that gust, and that's going to bring us up closer to the wind. The gust will pass, we'll then tack, boom, lovely. But if we're sailing a boat like a Hobie 14, what is the right thing to do? Because the right thing to do here would be to carry on, and then because the wind is going to change direction here, we want to be ready to tack so that when we go into that gust, we tack, and we can actually tack a bit earlier. We'll be feeling the effects of the gust before it is actually really on us. We tack a bit early, go. So where do you look for the gust? You look directly upwind and a little bit in front as well, but directly towards the direction of the wind. But then do consider that we're all moving forwards. So if you're sailing here and you're thinking, oh, there's a gust there, or actually a little bit more down here, oh, there's a gust up there, I can see it. By the time the gust is actually coming through, you've gone beyond where the gust is. So that might be what's going on there, John. Okay, there we go. That is all I'm going to talk about for now on the topic of spotting gusts and where to go. But I hope that helps. Okay, back to the live chat. Jack, on the topic of the speed stick. Oh, yes, it's one of my favorite topics. And another big announcement just in that there have been several people saying, come on, we want Joe from Joyrider TV on the speed stick. So this year, I am going to be on the speed stick as well. Massive, I know. And for anybody who's coming to Vasiliki, in the past, yes, there have been some Vasiliki speeds on the speed stick, but it is one of the easiest places to sail fast in the world, but it shouldn't be excluded. So if you're coming here on holiday and you want to get on the stick, you can get on the stick. You just need to submit your results in the usual way, which is to send me an email. All right, so continuing, Jack's, here we go. How far up the speed stick do you reckon I could get on a free sail Dart 16 solo? Wanted to put some speeds on last year. GPS gear, I will be doing it this year. I would say spinnaker boats. All right, here we go. Are spinnaker boats quicker with the spinnaker up, or are they quicker with two sails sailing more on a beam reach? Because what the spinnaker does on a catamaran, or a lot of boats, in fact, is rather than it making it go that much quicker, if it's windy, this is, it just takes you further downwind. Whereas if the wind's a bit lighter, like let's say you've got 14 knots of wind, then yes, you'll definitely go faster with the spinnaker up. But the fastest possible way that you can sail a lot of boats is two sails on this beam reach, where we start just coming further down and further down. Because on a spinnaker boat, because it's taking you so far downwind, every time you head up towards the wind, you're going to become overpowered, and it's not actually going to get you to go that much quicker, except for to achieve this goal of getting to a point downwind. So it might be with two sails is the top speed for a Dart 16. And I would say a good target speed solo Dart 16, just throwing this out there, 17.5 knots. There we go. And if you haven't got a GPS, like these days, anybody who's got a smartphone, you could even get an old smartphone and just run an app on the smartphone. Make sure that the old smartphone that you've got will support an app to track your speed. Of course, water speed is my favorite at the moment, but there's also one called Sail Free GPS. These apps, they are free to a certain extent. Like you miss a few of the features if you don't use the paid for version, but take a phone in a dry bag and then voila, you've got a GPS. But if you really want to kill two birds with one stone, you could get, here we go, a GoPro Hero 7. You can pick these bad boys up for not very much these days. It's got an inbuilt GPS, and off you go on the speed stick, and you get some absolute solid gold video footage. All right, Jack says, I reckon 20 knots is a goer. Okay. I'd have to lay it out there that I've never sailed a Dart 16. Maybe this year is the year. All right. So, and all right, we're diving back into the preloaded section, and we've actually got coming through with a question is Trump and Camilla. First time that Trump and Camilla have been in touch. And I don't know if that's two people or one, but they say, how do you know how much volume you have in the hulls? Yes, in my presentation from the boat show, I'm talking quite a lot about the amount of volume in the hulls of the boat. So the first thing is, when we're talking about the volume, we're talking about the hull's ability to float and how much weight they can carry. So examples here, a high volume hull, if we look from the back, would be something like this. If we squared that off, there we've got, could be any roto molded plastic boats like the Dart 16, or it could be a boat like a Hobie 15, Hobie Pacific, any of the cat range. In fact, most catamarans that have a skeg hull have been built with high volume. And then if we look at it from the side, it's be a slightly different scale. It's, you know, from top to bottom is going to be quite deep. So that is high volume. How can you tell how much volume you have? The only way you could actually test this is the scientific test would be if you got a tank, or actually the easier test, still a bit strange, if you could actually fill the hull completely full of water, completely, not suggesting anybody tries this, and then empties the water into a bucket big enough. In fact, easier, I'm just thinking here, I'm not a scientist, but what you could do is weigh the hull, take one hull, weigh it, then fill the hull absolutely completely with water, then weigh it again, and then the difference in weight will be the actual volume of the boat in oh, Hans would be someone who'd be able to come up with an idea. Nice to have you with us, Hans. How to actually get the volume of the hulls. But if you weighed it full of water, so you know how much that water weighed, 1 litre of water, I believe, weighs a kilo. Is that true? So then you could work out how many litres of water are in the hull. And there you are. You've just worked it out. But generally speaking, skeg hull boats, the highest volume. The lowest volume is the Hobie 14. Similar size boat, and that's the profile. So that is how much space, like air, there is in the hull. Whereas on a skeg hull boat, you've got all of this. So just by looking at the boat and go, that is a big hull, then you know you've got high volume. The more modern boats are also being built with more volume in the front. So you might notice on a boat, it sort of comes outwards a bit here. Might be quite subtle, but that is to stop the boat from nosediving as well. But masses of volume in those hulls for the size of the boats. Thank you very much, Trump and Camilla, for your question. Very good. All right, back into the live chat. We've got Multi on board. Sorry if that's not how you pronounce your name. Maybe Frank. Is that better? What do you think about the Hobie 17? All right, good question. The Hobie 17 was first introduced in 1985. It was first introduced as a single-handed boat, and then later a kit was developed for adding a jib to make it into a double-hander. The Hobie 17, as this sounds like I'm reciting something from my presentation last week, but the Hobie 17, even though it's symmetrical hulls, they are low volume symmetrical hulls. So that is the first feature that we need to look out for. And the boats with low volume hulls are harder to sail because the boat sinks more in the water. It doesn't float you as much. But yeah, the 17, really, really good, high performance. I would only get a 17 if I was going to sail it 80% of the time as a single hander. The 17 has also got the picnic bench style wings to trapeze off, and trapezing off these wings gives you an absolutely magnificent feeling and perspective while you're sailing the boat in a wind. Yeah, it's really nice boat. Something to look out for if you're buying a used Hobie 17 is the mainsails, the original mainsails from Hobie. They didn't have a very long shelf life. They're kind of, it's a bit weird how they're made, but like what, they're kind of laminated on one side of the sail, not both sides like a lot of laminated sailcloths are. And this laminate, over time, it starts to flake and the sail loses its strength. So do be aware that the original sails from Hobie don't last as long as other materials. But there are other sail makers who can build Hobie 17 sails very nice out there. But I'd say if somebody's said to me, do you want a Hobie 17 for, let's say, 1,500 euros, and I didn't have a boat and I was going to sail mostly single-handed, not really too worried about class racing, unless you happen to be in the USA where the Hobie 17 class is popular for racing as well, then I think I'd go for it. Not so good if you're going to be sailing in big waves as well, because again of these low volume hulls. There we go. That's a pretty comprehensive answer. Thank you very much. All right. So as I mentioned, yes, we have got Hans on board. Nice to have you with us, Hans. Greetings from Germany. And all right, so I've got another question in the live chat. This is from Vihez5, who says, I believe it must be in Australia, because he says just got a Mosquito catamaran, which we're going to have this. By the way, in fact, before we go on to this, as well as everything else, the presentation that I actually did from the boat show, if you have seen it, you'll see it's 30 minutes long, and there's quite a lot of boats featured. But the original version of this chat, there was probably twice as many boats in it. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to re-record this presentation, but include as many different popular types of catamaran as there are. And I've actually reached out to various of the groups on Facebook, these catamaran sailing groups, to say which classes should I definitely include in this presentation. And then we're going to go through all of them. And it might be my first ever non-live video, which is over an hour long, but then I can divide it into chapters so you can watch it in bits if you haven't got time to do the whole thing at once. I think it could be very good. There we go. So I might be reaching out to various people for video footage of various types of boat or photographs. Thanks in advance. But yes, the Mosquito, the reason that brought it up is the Mosquito from Australia is going to be in that presentation. So then we will all be able to see what the Mosquito is like. So Vihez 5 says he's been sailing a laser. He's just started sailing the catamaran. Can you pump on a catamaran? The short answer is the mainsail, not really. Not like you can on a monohull. Because the reason that pumping works is, if this is our mainsail, is when we pump, what we're doing is we're bringing the mainsail in quickly, and that's kind of like wafting the air. So it is what it sounds like. It's pumping like that. So it's pumping the air, and that's going to propel the boat forwards. It is illegal in racing, by the way, in most classes, pumping like that. But if you sail a catamaran, you will know that we use a multi-purchase main sheet to control the mainsail. So if we try to pump by pulling in the main sheet, we're going to have a good pumping effect. We're going to have to pull in probably about 3 meters of main sheet to have this pumping effect on the mainsail. Now, what I have done in the past is after a tack. So as we know, when we tack, we get head to wind, we release the main sheet, we then come through the tack, start sailing forwards. Now, I might give it a few pumps, legal pumps, this is, coming out of the tack, where I'll sheet in, coming out of the tack, which might drive the boat forwards a bit. I might then sheet out one more time and then sheet in one last time. And that does help to propel the boat forwards a bit. But generally speaking, we can't pump in the same way that we can pump on a monohull. Now, one exception to this would be in very light winds. What you can do, especially if your boat has got a boom, is you could pretty much disconnect the main sheet altogether, grab hold of the boom, and then pump it like you would do on a windsurfer, like this. And in really light winds, that is actually going to work like monohull pumping. But that is pretty much the only time when that would be. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Vihes, for your question. All right. So Hans said I was right on the weighing the boat, although we're not recommending you fill your boat with water, because the actual weight of that water might destroy your hulls. There we go. All right. Duke is on board, I believe somewhere in California, USA, who says pump with the rudders. Yes. A popular method that is used by the kids sailing the Optimists. Love it. If you can't get your boat to go, you just pump with the rudders. The rudders are going side to side like paddles, and they will propel you forwards. There we go. All right, so there we are. I think we're going to leave that there for today. Thanks to everybody for tuning in live. Thanks to everybody for their preloaded questions. Again, do check out the new tiers on that's TIERS, not tears like crying, on the YouTube channel memberships and on Patreon, where on the $10 or more tiers, you can book a one-to-one Zoom chat with me for no further cost. Yeah, and we could talk about anything, but probably sticking to some sort of catamaran sailing related topic is probably the best. So there's a calendar linked, which you could just sign up for a slot on the calendar. That will automatically generate a Zoom, thing that you click on at the time, and then off we go, and we'll have a chat. I'll get the whiteboard out, or if you let me know ahead of time what it is you want to talk about, perhaps I could actually bring some other items with me into the studio, such as, you might say, Hobie rudder stock. Yes, of course. All things like that. Anyway, I think I'm waffling now. So yes, I'm going to go, and so should you. Have a great weekend, everybody. Keep it safe. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere or brave enough to go out sailing, then get on the all-new Speed Stick. Head over to totaljoyrider.com and you will see the new Speed Stick. Just click on the link. I think the link says send it. Thought that was pretty good. And then you'll see the new page. I think it looks much nicer And also the big development with it is it will display properly on a telephone as well as on your desktop computer. There we go. Thanks very much. Please hit the like button before you leave, and I'll see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.